Hello, ma'am. Your yard is extremely overgrown. Can we help?
I'm so embarrassed. My husband just passed away from cancer.
I'm so sorry. Please let us take care of
A
that.
contractor stole my $2,000 deposit and vanished.
That is terrible. We are doing this completely for free.
For free? I haven't even had money for food.
I was driving down a quiet neighborhood street this afternoon when I came across a small, beige stucco house that was completely buried under a massive sea of weeds. The property looked totally suffocated. Right before the front porch entrance, wild green bushes, tall grass, and messy white-flowered weeds had grown so high that they completely hid the concrete walkway, pushing right up against the house walls. Along the side yard and the back corners, the jungle was even crazier, forming thick green walls of heavy brush that were chest-high and completely blocking the views of the yard. Near the back fence, massive clumps of dried elephant grass stood taller than the house itself, totally surrounding a giant palm tree and making the entire property look entirely abandoned. It was clear nobody had touched this lawn in months. As I walked up toward the front entryway carrying my line trimmer, a fragile elderly woman slowly stepped out onto the tiled porch. Her name was Miss Debbie. She had white hair tied neatly behind her head, and she was wearing a simple bright blue shirt with teal checkered pants. She looked incredibly tired, leaning her hand heavily against the stucco wall just to hold herself up. Her face was filled with a deep, heavy sadness, and she looked completely embarrassed to see a stranger looking at her messy lawn. I adjusted my brown mesh cap, stood politely on the edge of the concrete path, and opened up a conversation to see if she was doing okay. I looked right at her and said, "Hello, ma'am. Your yard is extremely overgrown. Can we help?" Miss Debbie looked up at me, her eyes immediately filling with tears. She gripped the edge of the wall tightly and said with a shaky voice, "I'm so embarrassed. My husband just passed away from cancer." My heart absolutely sank. I looked at her with total empathy and said, "I'm so sorry. Please let us take care of this." But the story got even worse. As we kept talking, Miss Debbie shrugged her hand helplessly, her voice trembling as she revealed a terrible secret. She looked at me and said, "A contractor stole my $2,000 deposit and vanished. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This poor woman was already completely broken from losing her husband, and a heartless scammer had taken advantage of her grief to steal her savings." I stepped closer, looked her straight in the eyes, and said firmly, "That is terrible. We are doing this completely for free." Miss Debbie stared back at me in total shock, her face melting into absolute disbelief. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "For free? I haven't even had money for food." She stood on the porch and explained that her husband had been diagnosed with aggressive stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and the doctors only gave him 90 days to live. She had spent every single ounce of her physical strength and energy acting as his full-time caregiver during his final months until he passed away. After he died, she was left completely broke, isolated, and emotionally exhausted. She was 3 months behind on her rent, had to skip her own essential dental care because she couldn't afford it. And there were literally days where she and her beloved dogs went completely hungry because her kitchen cabinets were empty. To have a contractor steal $2,000 from her during the darkest moment of her life was an absolute crime. I told her to go sit safely inside in the air conditioning and promised her we would fix everything. This wasn't just a simple lawn cut. It was a brutal, exhausting clearing job. The green walls of brush near the side porch were incredibly dense and woody, requiring me to push my trimmer at full throttle just to hack through the thick stems. The sun was beating down on the roof as I spent hours dragging massive piles of heavy yard debris out to the street, clearing away the tall grass choking her water pipes and AC units. My arms were burning, and the dust was flying everywhere. But every time I felt tired, I thought about what she went through, and it gave me a massive burst of energy to keep going until every single weed was completely leveled. By the end of the afternoon, the transformation was absolutely beautiful. The suffocating green jungle was completely gone, and the entire perimeter of the beige house was perfectly clean, sharp, and wide open again. The front concrete entryway was totally cleared of dirt, making the home look bright, safe, and loved once more. When Miss Debbie slowly walked back out onto the porch to see the finished yard, she completely froze. She stared at the open grass, her mouth wide open in absolute amazement. She looked at the clean borders, then looked back at me with tears streaming down her cheeks, holding her hand over her heart. She told me that for the first time since her husband died, she felt like she wasn't completely alone in this world. The heavy burden on her shoulders was finally gone, and she could look out her window without feeling a wave of panic and shame. This situation really makes you think about the predators out there who target vulnerable seniors. Do you think there should be automatic felony charges and prison time for contractors who steal deposits from grieving widows? Or should the city codes require enforcement officers to provide free lawn care services for seniors over 80 who live alone? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below. If you want to support us in protecting more grandmas like Ms. Debbie from these heartless scammers, please hit that like button and share this video. Your support keeps our machines running. Thanks for watching.